Hi everyone! Today we are going to talk about what is fire energy and why is it important to us. Let's get into it. Hello again everyone, this is Berto and welcome to my channel where I share my journey as a shaman practitioner. And today we are joined by our very good friend, Suan! Hi Suan! And for those of you who don't know and who's watching this for the first time, Suan is from Exoterica Creations. And Exoterica Creations combines the art and science of esoteric practices so that they can create these wonderful creations like incenses, sprays, and jewelries that are very, very important for shaman practitioners like me. Welcome back, Suan. Hello.
Oh, thank you for having me, Bato.
Okay, cool. And like we mentioned earlier, today we are going to talk all about fire energy.
That's a
Fire.
very hot topic.
Quite literally.
Yes, it
So
is.
speaking of hot topic, we heard a lot about fire energy on different traditions and even Hollywood and magical productions. But let's take a step back and really, really understand what is fire energy and what is its relevance and its importance to modern people like us?
That's a good one. Because it is true that fire is something we are familiar with as a force in our homes. It's about drive, it's about passion, and most of us will agree that when we think of fire, it's very high energy, it's very life-giving kind of energy. But like most other energies, fire also existed way before humans learned how to control fire, and this was one of its main thing. And when humans did, and we started to learn the properties of heat and light, and we started to apply it to cooking or to bronze working, this started to define us humans from other animals. And to me, that is a very first and very strong distinction fire made for us. Suddenly we are no longer like an animal. We knew how to harness the power of fire to evolve as human beings. So that's something, to me, is one of the greatest contribution fire has for us. And then if we take an elemental point of view, you can't really talk about fire without talking about the other elements. Specifically, I'm making reference to the air element, the water element. In some cultures, there is the metal element, and of course, we have the earth element, and that's something that we covered in our Earth Day conversations.
Yeah.
So, in this context, you see, unlike Earth that can stand on its own and it can exist and it can coexist with other elements, fire cannot technically exist without air. And air, as a separate element, is what gives fire and its combustible quality, which is why we see fire, and it can amplify the power of fire too. So one distinction fire has in relation to the other elements is that it interacts a lot more aggressively towards the other elements. For example, fire and metal. We can melt metal down to create all kinds of weapons and all kinds of tools for ourselves. But at the same time, we are diminishing the quality and the metal energies and we are transforming it into something else. Which is, again, to me, it is an amazing quality of fire. And if we sit down and we meditate the properties and the power where fire is, it is that transformative quality. If you think of furnaces that harness the fire's energy, anything that goes in a furnace, is melted down to a liquid state. And the furnace works off the principle of fire and air coming together to create and to keep it hot and burning. The other thing that that is all about fire, which is very important to all of us, is that fire is in relation to the sun. Is the life source for the earth. And it is why we call it the life-giving energy, because without the sun, we're not going to have, like this nice little palm tree behind me and all these things. So, that's very much the attributes of fire into our lives. But of course, if you look at the modern person and go, well, fire in my world is kind of not the naked flame like what it used to be in the days of the bronze working. But this is where I go, you will be surprised how much fire still shows up in your life.
True.
The creative energies of fire, for example, the potent energies of fire,
Mhm.
for example,
Mhm.
is still very much alive, and till today you hear people say don't play with fire, or unless you're okay to get burnt. So there are many
True.
many different types of fire qualities that are being thrown around, and we still apply a lot in our daily lives.
Yeah.
Transformation work is definitely one of them, which is just a very fire type of energy and force.
True.
The other thing that that is quite useful to consider is that of how specifically fire transforms many types of materials. But there is a close relationship between fire and crystals that are formed as a result of certain fire kind of events. So for this, we can tap into a whole different world, which is the world of minerals, and understand the qualities that fire transforms in our materials to form different types of crystals. And the final thing I would just like to throw in here, and I think most of us who are some kind of practitioner will be quite familiar with, is that for many modern practitioners, we engage the use of fire to burn certain materials, and we make that into offerings. For example, incense is one example. Another way that we use fire very commonly is that we use it as a cleansing agent. For example, we burn sage leaves and we use the smoke from sage leaves still to cleanse the space. So these are all very simple reminders of how fire is still very much part of our lives, and it's a wonderful element that is still very much alive and kicking.
That is true. When you put it that way, what I can take out is that fire has both something very physical, and there's also a very esoteric side of it that almost like transcends all parts of your life. And
Yes.
it's almost as if like the very first type of technology that was divinely given to us as human beings. And if you look at it that way, I mean, isn't that what the legends have been saying for the longest time?
It has. I mean, you
Yeah.
think about it, when we cook, are we not transforming the ingredients through
True.
the use of the fire energy?
Exactly.
Whether or not you have a naked flame, if you start your oven or you boil some water over a stove, you are tapping into the fire's energy to make a transformation.
Correct.
It's just about gaining an awareness of the level of affinity and how we really use that energy in our lives, and the whole concept of slowing down or taking the time to really be present to what's going around you is about including this level of awareness into your life. It's just whether or not we want to build an awareness around it, really.
True. I agree. And you mentioned that even in the modern world, it's so prevalent. But now I want to make a little bit of a distinction that apart from the usual, hey, I need fire to cook my food and fire up my oven, in the esoteric sense, how do we work with fire? How do we tap into it? How do we get in touch with it?
Okay, well, in many ways, I will say that that's a very simple one that comes to my mind, and that's I'm borrowing from the Taoist perspective, which is that the Taoists view our bodies as the furnace, and in order for this body to burn, we feed it healthy food. And that food generates energy, and that's one aspect of the fire element inside us. But the Taoists also believe, through the practice of Qigong, for example, that we maintain our physical body through training and exercise. Right? So that's the other aspect of the whole concept of being attuned with this fire energy. And then, closely related to this is how we breathe. As we already said before, and I've mentioned that fire and air is very closely related. And there's a lot of practice around breath work. And how we breathe, and how we control our breath is the same way that how we control the fire within us, and that energy generation. So this is going on all the time, and you can meditate upon this, and you can unfold the many layers for you. Just going through this step by step, which is what I did to kind of like work out the little how it's really working inside me. But I'm gonna say this is a wonderful starting point you've never tried, but it's gonna be somewhat limited. I feel that there are many ways in which we can tap into our our fire sides. For example, many of the fire element is very closely related to our emotions and to our sexual center. This is why we talk about fire being about creativity. And you want to think about what kind of fire type behaviors you might be exhibiting, or what kind of non-fire type behaviors you might have, and that might be a very different way of approaching what kind of fire person are you, for example. But then we have the shamans, and fire to the shamans is very closely related to life, to the spirit, to its consciousness, to this idea of the primal forces that work around that. So for a shaman, I do believe that, so this is very cute understanding that for most shamans, if you really want to test your affinity to fire, at some point, you really need to be in front of a big bonfire, and you do the whole, what we call baptism of fire. It's not just the shamans, to be honest. It also exists in many other cultures where you either come in very close contact with fire. Some of them put themselves in extreme fire type situations, just to get the sense what is the meaning of being burned, and can they handle that kind of heat and pressure. I'm going to say, okay, that's definitely one way. That's really going to push your boundaries around will and discipline for you. But there is sometimes for a modern person, that sounds a little far-fetched for me. I don't really see myself being able to start a fire in my study as and when I want to review my relationship with fire. And some of us even find it difficult to do a simple smudging when we are living in a hotel room, for example, because we feel the smoke alarm is going to go off. Right? So there are many other ways too, I feel. And one very simple way to get to know the fire element to me is to get to know the different types of crystals. So basically, fire has transformed many minerals, and some of them have turned into crystals. But fire is not the only element that is in crystal formation. Water crystals, for example. Water as an element, has also formed different types of crystals. So, one wonderful way you can learn distinctions is really to pick out two different types of crystals. Okay, for example, fire type will be a carnelian, an obsidian, or citrine, and you can compare it to something more watery in nature, which is like an aquamarine, for example, or something more airy that doesn't really like water, and they're not really great friends with the heat, which is something more the lines of celestites, or even some degree the amethyst, for example. They are not great fans of the heat, and they are okay with water, but they are truly something with the air. So when we work with crystals like that, it gives us a lot of opportunities to be very finely attuned with what different distinctions can be like. And when we can start to have these distinctions, it's going to really help us train our distinctions in these ways. And to me, that's a really wonderful way to get to know the elements. It's safe. It's accessible, and it's definitely something that we can take with us, and we can unfold in many different ways. So to me, I could go on about this for a long time, but I'm going to suggest that these are good ways to begin, and we can talk about it later and let it unfold at different levels.
True. Maybe we should have a separate video on crystals in the future. There's a lot to talk about there. But I really like your point about, when you work with crystal, it's something safe, it's something you can carry around. It doesn't trigger the smoke alarm for people like us in Singapore, very dangerous proposition. And that makes it like more workable for modern people like us. So yeah, that's very good discussion on fire. We covered a lot today for just one element. So thanks a lot, Suan. And again, we love to have you here around. Hope to see you again in our next video. And for our viewers, guys, if you want to know more about Exoterica Creations, I'm going to leave the link to their website below. And also, if you want to hear more about the shamanic practice or energy or anything and everything that Exoterica does, do watch out for our next video, and like, comment, and subscribe to our channel so that you get notified for the next one to come up. And that is all for me right now. Thanks for joining us, and see you in our next video. Bye!